honestly, I don't know anybody who's doing it like I do. And basically, I just really bombard the dog with birds. I just go out with a bag full of pigeons and I just have the dog running loose.
Talk to me about launchers, how you use them, and really like the timing, sort of being liberal with flushing the bird.
That's the mistake that I see a lot of trainers make is,
are there drawbacks or pitfalls that the beginner or amateur handler would need to watch out for?
you just got to put the work in. It doesn't take a lot of time, but you kind of have to be consistent with it. When I worked with a bunch of dogs, if you're smart, you do learn from your mistakes. And I made a bunch of mistakes. 2010, I started working dogs for the public. Yeah, I just enjoyed it.
What would you tell the person that is kind of like, yeah, I could have pigeons, but I'm not sure. I don't really know what's involved and I don't know how to build a coop. What would you tell that person?
What I like about pigeons is that
Hey everyone, Nick Larson here, host of the Birdshot Podcast, the show where we go beyond the flush to explore the full upland hunting experience with guests from all across the uplands, from shotguns to bird dogs to habitat and conservation, and the traditions that connect all of us to a life afield. The Birdshot Podcast is presented by Onyx Hunt and supported by folks just like you via our Patreon community. If you want to stay up to date and not miss any of our upcoming episodes, be sure to subscribe and follow the show in your podcast player or YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching today. Go ahead and tap that button. Thank you for doing so. And with that said, let's get into today's conversation on the Birdshot Podcast. Today, I am very excited to have Mark Payton joining us on the show. Mark, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
well, you're very welcome. Thanks, Nick.
I am excited. We were just talking before we hit record and we started getting into stories right away. And I was like, wait a minute, we got to hit record. This needs to be captured.
Yeah, let's do this raw.
Yes, exactly. So Mark is on the show. And for those that may be familiar, because Mark, you do have a YouTube channel. And in fact, I was watching some of your videos today and that's where some of my early questions were going to come in, but we're going to be talking plenty of bird dogs today and dog training. And man, I don't know about you, but it's August 6th today. We're recording this. I'm getting pretty excited. How about yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you just kick us off with a little bit of an intro? Tell us a little bit about you and as it relates to bird dogs and upland hunting and the things that we do.
Okay. Well, I hunted as a kid, but we didn't have dogs. And then after college, a friend invites me to bird hunt.
Where'd you grow up, Mark?
Louisville, Kentucky. And I still live just right across the river. I live in southern Indiana now, but never had dogs. And a friend invites me to hunt. And so we go bird hunting and I was absolutely hooked. I mean, watching those dogs hunt and point and back and retrieve, I was just, utterly hooked. And so I decided that I wanted to get a dog, but, not just any dog. I figured if I was going to have to pick up dog hair or shovel kennels for the next 10 years, I wanted a good one. So basically I was starting a new dog every year. And so I would keep the best and I would sell the rest. And at that time, probably much like yourself, I was a sponge. I just read everything, every book, every magazine article, watched every VHS tape I could get a hold of, but I made mistakes. I made a bunch of mistakes. I was way too reliant on the word whoa. And my dogs were very staunch, but oftentimes their style suffered. And then I watched this Bill West video. And you're familiar with the Westies and the West Gibbons,
Familiar enough. Yeah. I wouldn't consider myself a student of it or anything, but I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so in the video, Bill West asked the question, why do dogs point? And Nick, I'd had dogs for 5 or 6 years, several dogs, and it never once did it dawn on me, why do dogs point, And so dogs point when they can't catch. And so that just kind of, just was a whole new approach for me. And so that began where basically my job then just became convincing dogs that birds can't be caught, And so that's when I started using pigeons and electronic launchers to simulate what a wild bird would do. And so I stopped using whoa entirely when I was working with new dogs, when I was starting dogs. And instead, I just gave them opportunity after opportunity to point, just like if we were wild bird hunting and there were plenty of birds. And, as you could imagine, they'd just start flushing birds and then they chase them. And then they flash point them and then they chase them. And then they'd start pointing longer and longer. And during all that chasing, I was introducing the dog to gunfire. And so then finally, when that dog finally pointed, held long enough for me to get in, flush it, kill the bird. It's kind of like a light bulb moment to the dog. He's like, I got it, boss. How about I point him and you kill him, because trying it his way, he had been unsuccessful all that time, but only with my help was he able to get what he wanted, which was the bird in his mouth. So in addition to just training staunchness and recall and such, that's when I was learning to force fetch too. And I realized that there was no good, this is 2007, there were no good force fetch videos at the time. And so I actually filmed a little Sony camera, one dog start to finish, edited it myself. And I started selling that in the mail order houses like Lion Country and Dogs Unlimited. And it was called Reliable Retrieving. A year later, I did another one with Whoa. It's 2 dogs start to finish where you could just see it all, good and bad, ugly, and then I wrote the book. Soon after that, I started training dogs for the public part-time. I keep 2 or 3 dogs, 8 months out of the year. And as you said, I've got a YouTube channel.
Oh, I love it. It's a great background and a good preface to many of the things we'll cover. I didn't mention right at the outset, but yeah, you authored the book, Favorite Ways to Train Your Bird Dog. I've got a copy here for anybody watching. They can see that. When did you write the book and originally publish it?
It was 2009. A little revision to it since then, but yeah, it was 2009.
We'll do a plug for that later, and I'll have a link in the show notes for anybody that is interested in a copy. I just finished reading it last week, and we were communicating, and I was kind of telling you, not blowing smoke. I've read a lot of books and I've had books sent to me, and it may be me. I know there's others out there. I would describe myself as, I'm a bird hunter first, and I'm a bird dog handler as I need to be. I'm reluctant to call myself a bird dog trainer. And I really appreciated your book because where I'm at now, 11 years into the whole bird dog ownership and handling side of things, I obviously have a much better understanding of it today than I did way back then. And I appreciate what you said. It's like when you start out, you're kind of reading a lot of stuff and you read a lot. I felt like I read a lot about, okay, this is the end result that I'm going for. But the in-between, there's so much gray area and so much nuance and understanding the process, how to get there. And kind of like you said, it's sometimes a little perspective shift can be that light bulb moment for you. I know I want my dog to stand still, but why? Why does he want to stand still? Why would he even consider doing that? And your book it's not super thick. It's not overly dense, but it's very detailed. And I think I described to you last week, I felt it said what it needed to say in a very concise manner without sort of overloading you as the reader with a bunch of extra stuff. So it will be in my regular rotation of books that I recommend because I get asked from a lot of people. I am getting my first pointing dog. What books do you recommend? There's a few. I love the book Building a Grouse Dog by Craig Doherty. I really like the Pointing Dogs book that Reed Bryant did with was it Rick? Ronnie's? I think it was Ronnie Smith.
Ronnie and Suzanne. Yeah, that's excellent. Right.
Yeah. I love that one because first of all, it's beautiful. They got great photography. There's a lot to look at in there, but it also, I felt like that painted a really great picture of that end result that you're trying to get to and some of the concepts. Yours is, again, very concise, tactical in that way. And there's a lot of stuff that I think somebody could pick up and take out and literally go out into the backyard and start applying right then and there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So absolutely. I appreciate it. Well done on that. And
thank you.
I want to discuss that a little bit more today, but you've got the YouTube channel as well. You've got some videos there. You said you've been doing that for about 4 years now, I think.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know if I got lucky, but the first video on how to train your bird dog, was the most successful. And I think it's had 130,000 views or something.
I was going to ask you about that because, yeah, some of them, you've got some views or some videos with tens of thousands of views. And I noticed that one in particular. So, yeah, you've had a few go viral, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the nuts and bolts of how I like to train. What I really like to do is I like to start dogs, and that's what that is. If you watch the video, it's pigeons, launchers, simulate a wild bird and shut up, just let the bird teach the dog.
Yeah. And that's maybe my biggest takeaway from watching some of the videos. And it was you brought it up in the book a lot. And you really outlaid how your goal is to not say a lot to your dogs. You really want to, again, give the dogs opportunity, steer them in the right direction, but you're ultimately trying to, and you said this explicitly a couple of times, you want the relationship to be between the dog and the bird, the dog and the bird. And over time, what I was getting at earlier, that's the stuff that really makes sense to me now, having seen the last 10, 11 years of watching two of my own personal dogs develop and see that I don't really need to control a lot. I don't need to do a lot. I need to give them opportunity. And then I need to know how to step in with the right timing at the right times to do certain things. But I have to do a lot less than I originally thought I did.
Right, right. Well, the friend at work who invited me to hunt, it's kind of like old meets new because he was born in 39. And so he was about 50 when we started hunting. And he was not a dog trainer. He was a bird hunter, but he hunted some of the reclaimed strip mine ground in Kentucky, and where there were a bunch of birds. I mean, he just bird hunted his dog. And there's a chapter in the book called the hunt break method. Earl Krangle writes about it in his book. He called it the Mexico method. I mean, you just get your dog into, he just take a bunch of dogs to Mexico and they just bust covey after covey. And then they'd start pointing, they'd start backing one another. And that is the absolute best way to start a dog.
Yeah. I had a big smile on my face when I read that chapter.
Yeah. And that's what I try to simulate, right? Most people don't have access to that, but many of us can have access to pigeons, electronic launchers. And then you just try and simulate what would a wild bird do, and they're not going to tolerate pressure. They get too close, boom. And that's the mistake that I see a lot of trainers make, is that they want to see every bird pointed. That's not reality. You bird hunt, I bird hunt. I got decent dogs. They bump birds, I mean, every now and then they're going to be on the wrong side of the wind, and that's just a part of it.
Yeah.
And so if you will use your launcher appropriately, then you don't get those bad habits like creeping, and style issues, or crowd.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump in there, because I got an outline here, and we could go any number of different directions, but I want to talk about that because I think that was one of those things that I didn't learn it right away. I didn't do a lot of launcher work right away because, again, if you think about, you'll know this, like you get your first bird dog, there's things to invest in. There's dog food and collars and GPS, and launchers are another one of those things that they're not inexpensive. I don't know what they even go for these days, a couple $100 for one or two of them.
The electronics are probably closer to 4 or 5.
Yeah. But there's a lot of value in them, and they used appropriately. It is a tool that folks should consider if they're thinking about doing this kind of stuff. So talk to me about launchers, how you use them, and really like the timing and sort of being liberal with flushing the birds, right? Like using the flushing of the bird to teach the dog and develop that pointing instinct.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And there was a time when I would use multiple launchers, but here lately, Nick, I just use a single launcher and a bag full of birds, and basically just I simulate what a wild bird would do. I mean, if the dog gets too close, it's out of there, and we really should try and flush about every third bird. I mean, we want these dogs on their tiptoes. We want them thinking after I smell it, if I move just 1 extra inch, that bird's out of here. And so that's where you get that nice slammed point, that nice intense point, and that we like to see.
Yeah. And that was, I think I maybe saw it in one of your videos today. That was, you highlighted sort of a common thing that you see trainers that are learning, or handlers, I should say, not so much trainers, but they're learning. They really want to see their dog point, right? Like everybody's excited to see their dog point. So your natural instinct might be to wait. And, I hope he points. He's getting close to the launcher. I hope he's going to point. When you have to really flip the script, your natural instinct should be to flush that bird as soon as if you think the dog smells the bird, or there's even a threshold where you say, like, if he's getting so close to the launcher, just flush it. Like you have nothing to lose really by flushing the bird.
Yeah, well, you just nailed it. If he's on the wrong side of the wind, I mean, you just flush when he gets too close, and if he's on the right side of the wind, as soon as he makes an association, he takes one more step, it's out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about how the kind of the no stress, this is one of the updated sections in your book, the no stress, the fun method, how you use, you drew an association with Pavlov's dog, right? Most people are familiar with ringing the bell and then giving him a treat, and eventually the dogs start anticipating. And so you're kind of using the pigeons in the same way. And I will tell you, it wasn't your book that I came to that realization. I don't know when it was, but when I when I thought about it that way, that was the perspective shift for me. Pigeons, launchers, like, oh, that's how we use them. It's not just this really contrived exercise where I just want my dog to point and then I'm going to pop the bird and everything's going to go well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're referring to what I call the fun woe. And I honestly, I don't know anybody who's doing it like I do. And basically, I just really just bombard the dog with birds, and I just go out with a bag full of pigeons and I just have the dog running loose. And this is actually documented. And it's not a special case. The dog on that video, it's called, woe in 4 minutes. And if you watch that dog was actually woeing that first day after about 2.5 minutes, but basically I just go out with the dog and a bag full of pigeons, and where Pavlov would ring a bell, deliver food, ring a bell, deliver food. Well, not too many repetitions, and you ring a bell and they're like, where's the food? And that's where the salivation would come from. I do the same thing. I do not use whoa. I like to use the word whoop. I can extend that out, whoop, and so as they're running, when they're coming kind of towards me, not necessarily, but I just want to be able for them to see me. And I'll just say, whoop. And as soon as they see me, I throw a bird. They're not going to, that first bird, second bird, third bird,
they're not going to stop. And the dogs in that video didn't stop.
That's right. But come bird 4, come bird 5, they start, stopping, start paying attention. Maybe they start running to me faster in anticipation and I'm going to throw that bird. And it's just powerful. It's powerful. Now, this is developing. This is not training. And Ronnie Smith had an excellent way to define the difference between developing a dog and training a dog. And it's the word enforceability. Okay. So we can, I love it. It can normally, and it does work 100% of the time, dogs got to have some pointing drive there. I worked with a couple wire hairs. They were just all prey, no point, and it didn't work, but we're developing that and you can get them. I can normally get them to stop. I can't keep them there. And so it's not meant to replace a structured program. You're creating a conditioned response, just like Pavlov did.
Yeah. So, all right, trying to keep the person out there listening in mind. Let's talk about some of the things that you would need to even consider this, right? So you've got access to birds, you've got pigeons. You're a big fan of pigeons. That is helpful. Homing pigeons are obviously a plus here because you can, as you said, overload. I don't know if you said overload, but use a bunch of birds. Yeah, bombard. Yeah. There you go. Bombard the dog with birds. You've got that access to that with pigeons. So that's obviously a key part of your training program.
Right. And I do something very similar, Nick, with a back. And there's another video, I think I called it backing in 10 minutes, and where you do the same thing. But there, it's not, the cue isn't a word, with whoa, it's whoop, it's the backing silhouette. So I just go out, bag full of birds with my backing silhouette, dog I call Woody. And so I just catch the dog running. And as he's not paying attention to me, I set the silhouette up. He's going to come at some point. He's going to see it. Makes no association whatsoever, then I'm gonna throw a bird. And then we're gonna just continue to do that. And then suddenly the sight of the silhouette pointing is the cue, and he's expecting a bird to follow. And so what's normally neat about this is that you get all this style. I mean, they're not only stopping, they're stopping really stylishly too.
Yeah. So when you're doing that, the backing, what are some of the subtle cues, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but dog training, it's always about these like little baby steps, right? And I think that's where, again, when you're starting out, you have less experience, a lot harder to see. You got to learn how to read your dog before you can start to see those micro steps, baby steps. What are you looking for when you're doing, say, the backing exercises? And again, if folks watch that video, you'll see like it's nothing elaborate. You're holding the decoy kind of flat so it's not visible. Dog casts away from you. You pop it down, and then as soon as the dog sees it, there goes the bird.
Right. And then you just build on that. I mean, with the fun back, you just continue to do it, and they're going to start backing. And as they start to back more and more with consistency, then all of a sudden I'll start bringing in a live dog. And so I think it helps. Dogs are place oriented. And it helps if to set your backs up when you transition from the silhouette to a real dog. I'll just set up in the same situation, and with your backs, you like the dog, you like there to be some visual block, for them to go around a corner or over a hill. And so what you'd like to see is, there's nothing. They round the corner, pow, there's a dog on point. So it's real stark. It's binary, real stark, and at that point there, you're going to back or I'm going to throw a bird. And this is developing. So this is not dogs that are a little hard-headed and maybe they've been through a structured whoa program, or at that point, maybe I would, either give them a verbal whoa with a Nick, or, if you've laid the foundation with an e-collar, if they understand that the cue flank is really powerful, we can talk about that if you want, but you can stimulate on the flank and they'll just stop, and then through repetition, they'll understand to back.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody wondering, there's sections in the book that would detail, the full kind of the retrieving, e-collars, all of that stuff. But sticking with sort of this development side of things, the fun whoa, the no stress whoa, that sort of thing. I'm sort of speaking about this in a way that might be appealing to somebody that is new, starting out, wanting to work on some of these developmental things. Do you see are there drawbacks or pitfalls that the beginner or amateur handler would need to watch out for with this, outside of just, you really need to work on your timing? You've got to be very focused on your timing of when you're doing these things.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think just the opposite. I think it's ideal, because they get that nice style, and you're right. It is timing. Okay. It is whoop. They, and then they look and then you throw the bird. Okay. So it's cue and then the action of actually throwing a bird. Yeah, no, I think it's ideal.
Yeah. And I think that is, a lot of that is kind of counterintuitive when you're, I get maybe drawing on my own experience, like starting out, is this whole, like, because we're so vocal, right? Like we want to do everything by saying a word, even though we know our dogs don't speak English, right? But it's like you want to say so much because that's how your brain is working. But you really have to think, you've got to think visually, you got to think like a dog, or how a dog thinks, and you've got to focus on these cues and the timing. And when you do that right, things really start to click a whole lot more, it seems like.
Oh, absolutely. You just nailed it. I mean, verbal or the spoken word is how we communicate most, but that's not how dogs communicate. Tactile is touch, the flank collar, whoa post, half hitch, all that's much more powerful. I've heard of dog trainers, they'll say, does your dog sit or whatever? I don't teach my dogs to sit, my pointers and setters to sit, but does your dog sit? And they'll say, yeah, my dog sits. And they'll say, tell him to sit, and the dog will sit. And they'll say, okay, now put your hands in your pocket and tell your dog to sit. And sometimes he won't do it because it's not the spoken word. And even with my whoa, the dogs will sometimes they'll see me and I'm exuding something. They kind of know what's about ready to happen. Sometimes I can be a cue.
Yeah.
In fact, I was working dogs many years ago with a friend, and his dog came up over a hill and backed me. I mean, there was just something about me. He knew I was about ready, the female short hair, knew I was about ready to throw a bird. And he said, what's that dog doing? I said, well, she's backing me. He said, what do you mean? I said, she's backing the situation because she knows I got a bird. I'm about ready to throw it.
She's anticipating something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So maybe this would be helpful. One of the other things that I really appreciate about your book was at some point you lay out that you're kind of providing a toolbox, right? You cover lots of different methods, and you're very clear about, there are different ways to do this. There's unlimited amount of trainers and unlimited amount of methods, and you are of a mind, I would describe myself that way as well, is that there are different ways to do things, and it's really about finding what works for you and your dog.
And your dog. That's right. Their temperament.
Yeah. So how do you, if you got a pup and you're getting a dog started, do you have a way where you sort of go through the different tools? I'm going to try this first, this first, this first. How do you go about assessing a dog and finding out what works for that dog and for you?
Yeah. Well, of my favorite ways, right? Multiple ways. I have a favorite way to do just about everything, and just like with the gun intro, it's the chase method is the absolute best way, in my opinion, and as I said, kind of at the intro, I mean, they're learning, the birds are teaching them that they can't be caught. And as they chase, I mean, chase, I'm talking full full bore. I want that bird, and then after they're doing this for multiple birds, then I'll take a blank gun and I like to kind of squat down and then fire it in the ground behind me because the sound isn't as great. And so that's what I do. Just like with my wool work. And I was doing a bunch with the heeling wool, aka walking wool, but I've been doing a lot more with the wool post, because I just like the control. And it's, Rick and Ronnie, they do that. I've been working with an excellent pro, Brian Camper, he's a big fan of the wool post and just the control. At no point will you have such control as you do when wool breaking a dog with the wool post, because they're captive. From them to the wool post, they're restrained, and from them into you, they're restrained.
Yeah. Yeah. I know my guest last week, Del Whitman, he had recently went to a Rick Smith seminar and he had never really seen the wool post on full display, and he was pretty intrigued by it. And he's got a young pointer that he's working on as well. So I actually have done a little wool post work in the backyard with my younger dog, Rose. And I wouldn't say that no fault of the method. I didn't take it far enough to really say, boy, that really worked. But I have seen enough to know that flank contact point it does what it says it's supposed to do, right? It really encourages the dog to stop.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I have a wool video, and I use the walking wool for the most part. And then you progress. Okay. So you got walking wool, and then I use the buddy stick, which, if for anyone who doesn't know, it's really a length of PVC pipe, because what happens is that when the dog is always woeing next to you, when you finally give them the freedom of moving on a check cord, you woe them. Many dogs are going to want to come to you, and the buddy stick is just a little transitional thing that just because you can kind of push them to keep them from coming to you. Yeah.
How would you describe the walking wool?
Oh, well, the walking wool, just heel. And it just, what's nice about it, it provides you with lots of repetition. You're just healing the dog, heel, and then you woe. And for that point of contact, I kind of, as I stop them, I try and hold their little flank area in the back. And because later I will use an e-collar. Now, one advantage that the walking wool will have over some dogs, I find about 1 in 10 dogs, they go absolutely nuts with the half hitch. They go nuts. I had a dog, and I contend that her fight is not with me. It's with the wool post. She just kind of had to get it out, but she was quite vocal. It's not, just matter of factly, it's not something you would want to do in a neighborhood. She just went nuts.
Yeah.
But the walking wool, it's just a lot less stress.
Yeah.
But that's 1 in 10. The other 9, they kind of accept it rather quickly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's maybe, I'm always kind of trying to prepare myself. Okay. I've had 2 dogs. There are some slight differences, but not a lot. I felt like they developed pretty easily within, my limitations as a bird dog handler. But I have to imagine there's dogs that throw you curveballs all the time for the people that train lots of them.
Yeah. Well, if I can put you on the spot, so you got 2 dogs. How old are they?
So Hartley is 11 and Rose is 5.
Okay. And so this is, we talk about, fun wool being a great introduction for younger dogs, but really here's the barometer, to just, would you benefit from this training is really, and it'd be fun to go out with your buddies, and that way you got a little accountability, but basically, can you say, whoa, 1 time and your dog stop on a dime? That's it, and if not, this is something it just doesn't take but a few days. And you can normally get your dog doing that. It won't keep them there, right? But it'll encourage them to stop. That's where, then you can follow up. In fact, what I've been doing is even if they're going to go through a structured wool, start them with the fun wool that stops them. And then I go through the structured program, which will keep them there.
I would not bet that they would stop on a dime, I should say. They're pretty good, but I have just not done like the kind of reinforcement and the way that we get along in the fall. Like they're their staunchness around birds is at a level that I accept. I'm very happy with it. I feel like my dogs and I were working together. I have a lot of trust in my dogs that they are not intentionally trying to flush birds. And for me, that's kind of like the minimum bar, right? Like we're working together to try to make this thing happen. And that's what we do. But I appreciate, this is why I like this kind of stuff, because it really, it shows like, I have a lot of room for improvement, and I don't have to overcomplicate it. There are simple things that we can do and work on around the yard and that sort of stuff to improve these areas.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning with the fun whoa, we're paying them, right? That's kind of a big catchphrase these days, pay the dog, they stop, I pay them with a bird. So, and even in the video at the very end, I mentioned, that if you stop paying them, then they're going to stop working for you. So if the birds were to completely go away from the picture, well, then, whoop wouldn't mean anything, so yeah, it's something easy to do. And there's no reinforcement per se, just few repetitions, it's powerful. It's very powerful. Well, I sent you that cell phone video. The dog's been there for 3 days. I mean, I had picked up a dog a week and a half ago. And so we started the dog with fun whoa at the beginning of a session, gave her 4 or 5, not expecting anything, and then we worked her on birds and backing. And then I said, let's try this again, and I think bird 9 or 10, she's stopping on a dime, powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the paying the dog, that's maybe one thing that's kind of missing from my training on a regular basis, just because I don't have pigeons. I don't have, if I'm doing anything, it's maybe just sort of a simple little, like if we're out running, doing our exercise run, I might whoa them or stop them at certain places. I probably don't do it enough. It's not something that I'm always thinking about. I'm usually lost in thought thinking about something else, but
yeah.
I'm not really giving them that reward. That's something that I could add to my routine.
Well, and that's why, when it works, I mean, they're just so stylish because they just love it, and I do have a video on my channel called Working Dogs in the Neighborhood. And, I mean, this is really something that you could, if you had pigeons, if you had a place to keep pigeons and fly back, I mean, this is something that you could absolutely do in your yard,
What would you tell the person that is kind of like, yeah, I could have pigeons, but I'm not sure. I don't really know what's involved, and I don't know how to build a coop. What would you tell that person?
Well, I've got a video, right, that shows how to build a coop. Yeah. And they're just so powerful. What I like about pigeons is that, a healthy pigeon and an electronic launcher, with maybe a little acclimation period, to flushing the birds, they're not going to be caught. And so going back to what Bill West said, dogs point, when they're convinced that birds can't be caught, and that's what a pigeon does. And I defy, how do you do that? I mean, if you took away my pigeons and launchers, I mean, how do you convince them that a bird can't be caught and will flush immediately if they get too close by a dizzied up quail? You just can't do it. And I figured it up one time. It costs $0.05 a day per bird to feed your birds, so I've got about 20 homers at the moment. It's costing me $1 a day.
Yeah. That's
I'd say do it. Yeah. I mean, they do tend to want to hang around my car before they fly back sometimes. And so there's that, but yeah.
Have you been sneaking out into under any overpasses lately, or are those days long gone?
You know what? I honestly, I make too much money these days to do it, but I used to, and so what you're alluding to is netting pigeons. And there's a place in Louisville, there's literally 100 or more pigeons. And I would net birds. I got this big net. I'd put it on a telescoping pole, go out there. 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning was kind of like the sweet spot. And I'd have a light, a bird bag, and I can normally catch 5 or 6 pigeons. And I actually show that, but I don't do that anymore. Now I just buy my birds.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a little bit, just with, I've got two young boys, 2 sons that, I know some people that they will trap pigeons and you can kind of sell them, kind of get the kids thinking entrepreneurially. So I was kind of spinning the wheels on that. Like, I wonder if we should go out and trap pigeons if we had a spot. And I'm seeing them around the neighborhood in a few places. I mean, how do you trap pigeons? You just throw out a cage with some corn in it and some pigeon bobs?
Yeah. And it's and I've not had a lot of luck in that area, but that's the way it's supposed to work, and it's incremental. I mean, you just have all your bobs up for a few days, just let them go in and out, get accustomed, maybe drop a bob down, day 4 or 5. And then after that, just drop them all, and maybe even salt it with a bird too. Just they see one bird in there, they're like, hey, let's go on in there,
Okay. Yeah. So if you know somebody that's got a building or something where there's pigeons frequenting, you could do that.
Yeah, but pigeons are great. I'd encourage anybody to get pigeons, and that video that I did, working dogs in a neighborhood, with the silhouette. I mean, I work this one setter around the corner of my house. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny piece of land, and just with my launcher and my pigeon, it can actually start to make that association. When they smell a bird, then they point that, when they hear the word whoop, because they're anticipating a bird, then they stop. When they see a backing dog, whether if it's, and so if it's Woody is what I call him, as I said, you get a dog backing Woody. If we were to go somewhere else, your dog may not back that dog initially, but all it would take is one bird launch it. And after that, he's like, oh, okay. Woody means there's a bird here, and there's a bird here. So, and it's always maybe you've heard the metric, you want 5 good or nearly perfect workouts in 3 different locations before you really can consider a dog broke in any area, recall, whoa, back, retrieve, whatever.
And in theory, if you get the cue, the response, the association nailed in your yard, you go to the next location. Hopefully it will come a little bit easier, not right away, right? But it will come a little bit easier.
No, it's not from ground zero. Yeah. Yeah. Which that was kind of the impetus behind my reliable retrieving DVD, because and everyone to date, Tritronics had one with Jim Dobbs. It was pretty good. He used 3 dogs at different stages, but you're doing that work on the table, and the dog is just awesome. I mean, no stimulation required. You just say fetch, you run down and get it, and they come back, and you think, I've got this. You go down to the ground, and it's like day one. I mean, you have to start completely over, but like with what you're referring to with the backing, yeah, that transition is, real fast learning curve.
Yeah. It's funny, earlier you mentioned the VHS tapes, and obviously, do you still have a VHS player?
In the basement. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah. I
don't know if I've got a TV with coax or not, but
yeah, my parents had a rummage sale recently, and they dug out I had this whole box of CDs, and a lot of them were music. Some of them were video games, some of them were DVDs. And I was like, my boys were looking at them. There was actually some bird hunting games in there, which I've talked about on the show before. I used to have some different computer games that were for bird hunting. I was like, they're like, I want to play it. I'm like, we don't have a compact disc player. Like, I don't even know where to find one of those things, guys. Sorry, I have to see if I can find this game on the internet. Yeah, but I had a few VHS grouse hunting videos and some dog training stuff, I think, when I got my first dog as well. But fortunately now there is YouTube.
Oh, and I think that's really neat. That, I mean, I think all the trainers, or at least most of the trainers, they're showing everything. They're not holding anything back. I mean, there's no, lack of information, and so, which kind of segues to the end of my book, which, a phrase that I'd heard, information, plus application is transform. I mean, you just got to put the work in. And I mean, I talked with guys, I got a 3-year-old dog wanting recall. It's like, dude, I mean, 5 minutes a day, I mean, I was out, and I'm at my office, I ride the desk, from 8 to 5. I got 3 dogs. I'm working. I'm up this morning, 6:40. I got a light. I got a force fetch dog I can kind of do, before the sun's coming up. I got a dog that I'm wool breaking. I got a dog that I'm just kind of working on staunchness. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time, but you kind of have to be consistent with it,
Yeah. Yep. Consistency. I mean, I find that in so many, it's kind of been a theme of mine right now, as I'm trying to make improvements and do with businesses and all kinds of stuff. Like, there, as you said, there's no shortage of information. There is a guide to do just about anything today, to the point where the pendulum has swung so far, it's real easy to get trapped in just absorbing information and forgetting that key thing that you mentioned, information plus application,
right?
With consistency. That's how you get results and see real progress.
Yeah. Well, and I had this one guy, he said, "Hey, I'd like to get my dog in. I only take 3 dogs, 8 months out of the year when I have enough daylight, at the end of the night or whatever." He said, "I want my dog trained." I'm like, "Dude, I'm full." And he said, "Well, I'm really sorry about that." And I said, "Well, I do one-on-one. Would you be?" He's about 40 minutes away. So would you want to come on over and just work dogs with me? And so, he pays me a nominal fee. We work dogs, for an hour every Saturday morning. He enjoys it. His dog's doing really nice. And we were getting to the woe part. He was actually working on woe. And so he came back and so I said, "Well, let's see your dog." And just no improvement whatsoever. He said, "Mark, I was really busy this week." And I mean, I don't need the money. I do this because it's fun. And so I kind of just lightly just expressed that's like, "Hey, dude, you got to put the work in. I mean, 5 minutes a day. I mean, come on. I mean, let me check your phone history with Facebook or whatever. I mean, I'll guarantee, you're wasting more than 5 minutes a day. Get out there and just do it. Do it." That's right. Yeah.
What made you want to start teaching and sharing information? And was it just kind of, you came to some of these realizations on your own? Like when did you become the student and then say, "You know what, I want to share this information with people"?
Yeah, I don't know. And when I worked with a bunch of dogs, and you do, if you're smart, you do learn from your mistakes. And I made a bunch of mistakes, and I just started, 2010, I started working dogs for the public and part-time, 2 or 3 dogs. And, I enjoyed it, and, yeah, I just enjoyed it.
What kind of dogs do you keep in your kennel, Mark?
I'm a pointer guy who runs setters too,
Okay.
and so my buddy Brian Camper, who's a great pro in the Illinois area, he's a setter guy who'll run pointers, but yeah, I've got a pointer. I've got a setter at the moment,
Okay.
How about yourself? What do you have?
Well, I have 2 English setters.
Oh, you have 2 English setters. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I won't bore the listeners, but or I'll try not to, I guess. I've told the story many times. I always thought I'd get a German short hair, saw it on TV or whatever. That's what I pictured when I pictured a bird dog. And when I was looking to get my first bird dog, I stumbled upon a really, really great and well-known breeder here in Minnesota, Jerry Coulter, Northwoods Bird Dogs.
Sure.
I got one of his setters and I've never really looked back. I got a second one, Rose, she's 5, and I'll be getting another one next spring. So I'm pretty excited.
Oh, super. Yeah. And as I mentioned in the book, picking the right litter is more important than picking the right puppy, And so, and I was going to credit Nick Adair with this, and I told him about it. He's like, "I got that." He said, "I stole that from somebody else, but, just find somebody who does what you do. Or who does what you would want to do. If you're a grouse hunter, I mean, I'd be looking at grouse dogs. Quail hunter, I'd be looking at dogs that hunt quail. If I was a field trialer, NASTR or whatever, I'd be looking at pups out of NASTR champs. So I'm not saying that you can't have crossover, but let's kind of, hedge the bets on our side,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a concept that I'm much more familiar with now. I've come across it, I feel like it's pretty well discussed. You'll read it in magazine articles. And I think that's why I say I stumbled into the dog, because that's kind of what I did, but it wasn't because I knew better. It was just, I really just came across an article about Jerry. So it's kind of maybe a plug for good media coverage for breeders and kennels and that kind of stuff. But it was this really neat article that was about how Jerry bred dogs for grouse hunting, for bird hunters to grouse hunt. And it just really clicked with me for obvious reasons. And that's the path I went down. And I feel like it served me very well. So I would definitely echo that.
Well, and I do not know Jerry, but my understanding is he breeds bird dog to bird dog, and so that's what I want. I mean, I want both parents and I want both parents out there getting it done.
The dog that you had in the video, that little orange and white setter that you were going around the corner of your house backing, was that your dog?
No, it was
okay.
A client's dog. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a Shadow Oak Bow granddaughter. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I've got a couple pups. It's beautiful. Yeah. And I got a couple of pups of hers coming August 25th. Okay. So I'll start them, gun intro, bird intro, looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked gun intro, you prefer the chase method. That's really the method that I've used for both my dogs. It worked very well. I'm curious on some of the woe stuff. Do you do taking a step back from the birds and the pigeons and the bombarding them with pigeons and the timing and everything? Do you do like very early, like making dogs whoa before they go out the door, like just little cues around the house? Do you do any of that, or do you kind of just work on the bird stuff?
I do not. My dogs, they're kind of a hybrid. They're not house dogs, but they're not kennel dogs either. I have an area, fenced area where they run. And I do bring them in. I got a sunroom, but I don't do any of that. But that's something that, I mean, I'd say what the majority of your listeners probably have house dogs, and that's something that they absolutely could do. You'd want to, have a lilt to your voice. You wouldn't all just low pressure. You wouldn't want to kind of just, be stern about it, because, and a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, your voice can be pressure. And so, I mean, dogs can melt, and look like crap on point just because you're bellowing commands, and you may have never laid a hand on them.
Again, there's a lot of stuff that, as I think back on the way I approach things, just your natural human instinct is not going to be the right thing to do all the time, which is oftentimes to say too much and do too much, and maybe not think about your body language. And, because you mentioned things like hand gestures, it's a real simple thing that you're kind of overlaying, you're throwing the bird, you've got a hand gesture, that kind of, all of that stuff is communication with the dog. Everything is communication with the dog. They're so perceptive that they pick up on all of that.
Right. I think a real advantage to anyone who's undertaken force fetch is not just that how to, force a dog to retrieve, but it's how to take a relatively complex a task and break it down into these tiny finite bits. So what you have to ask yourself, if your dog isn't understanding, it's obviously there's confusion. So how can you simplify it? How can you clarify it for your dog?
I mean, I think some of that stuff is apparent, but if somebody is wondering, like, how do I know if my dog's confused? What should I look for to know that, okay, I need to back up, I need to simplify? Can you break that down?
Where have they been successful? Under what circumstances, what's different, and I will tell one on myself. I had a couple of dogs that just went home for force fetch, and so you're talking about the hand with the cue, and you can watch that reliable retrieving DVD that I did, that I sold back, many years ago. That's actually on my channel in its entirety in 4 sections. And so my hand, as I'm going down the table, my hand is a cue. And so when you start laying the buck down, with your hand not there, that's a big obstacle, And so, but I had never, until a couple of months ago, I had never had a dog that would cue off of my hand when we went to the ground. And so I had this dog, and honestly, I thought she was being obstinate, but she hadn't really shown me any kind of resistance in any other area. And so I just did what I just said, you should do. And I tried to say, how can I clarify this? So I actually got down on my hands and knees on the driveway, and I put my hand, on the buck, and it was applying low level stimulation for her to get it. And then I'd remove my hand. And so the hand was, she needed that cue when we were off the table. And it really surprised me, but it's everything that you're talking about. Cues and clarification.
When it comes to retrieving, that's another section in the book where you cover multiple methods. I think there was like the positive method, the competition method, and then the force method. Talk through those briefly at a high level.
The positive method is just to try and encourage your dog. There's really no such thing as a natural retriever, because, I mean, anything a dog, gets, I mean, they're going to want to keep and eat or whatever, but, for a dog, the dog has got to pick it up. So if the dog won't put a bird in their mouth, you're dead, Yeah. We'll get into the competing dog thing, but so if a dog will pick it up, then you clap, you act excited, maybe you walk backwards, right? Dogs have this opposition reflex. You pull, they want to, pull against you. You push, they want to push back against you or whatever. You walk away, they want to come to you. The last thing you want to do is chase after them, So that's one thing you can do. You can get down and you clap and you can wave your hat. And so I think what that does is it just like distracts them. They got it in their mouth and they're like, what's he doing? Because he's waving a hat, And so I think that works, things like that. The competing dog. And so that's one. You have to have dogs that are friendly dogs. And so I had a friend, her son has a retriever who didn't like birds in her mouth. And so the competing dog is you take that dog. So the dog won't retrieve and its owner is holding it by its collar. And you got to have a dog that's just awesome. And then so you just you throw, so it's just like you throw it and just fetch and they bring it back. Fetch and they bring it, fetch and they bring it back. And that other dog, they're just like, I want my turn. I want my turn. So then you swap after about 3 or 4 reps. So then now all of a sudden you hold the good retriever, you throw that bird out, and then you turn the other dog loose. And you give them 2 or 3 seconds. And if they don't scoop that bird up, boom, you go turn that good retriever loose. And I did that with this retriever. It was a golden, with this retriever and a dog that had never had a bird in its mouth. And so a buddy at work, he's got a Cocker Spaniel that's just awesome. And so, the Cocker was out and back, out and back, out and back. And then we swapped it. And so that golden went over there and fiddle farted around. I said, Andy, turn your dog loose, And as soon as she saw him coming, she scooped that bird up, and actually made a retrieve too. So her recall was pretty decent. So that's another one. The enforcing here, if a dog will pick up and carry, and you can enforce here, okay, collar condition, they understand stimulation, means to come to you, you can enforce the here. And so the hope is that they'll pick it up and as they come to you, they will keep it in their mouth. Okay. And so we tried that the other day with the dog, and she'd pick it up, and you don't say here when the bird's not in their mouth, but you don't want to call her away from the bird. So you wait till the bird's in the dog's mouth, then you say here. And if they don't respond, then you say here and you nick them with the collar. And so if the dog were to drop the bird, you have to still love on them. It's like, oh, you're such a good dog. You came to me, So the hope is, of course, that they will come and that they will bring the bird, And then, of course, and then the final is just, force fetch.
Yeah. Yeah. As you walk through those, I'm kind of being reminded of, there were lots of things that I felt in your book were informative in the way that they were very insightful. It was like, these are the little things that you're looking for as the trainer. And I feel like you addressed a lot of those things that are somewhat counterintuitive, like the example you just described, where you've got to be able to recognize those mini wins, those micro successes. Dog picked up a bird, but it dropped it. So, shoot. But no, we need to congratulate that because that was a step in the right direction.
Right. I've got a friend who's got, I'm not a breeder, but anyway, we had litter pups, and he's got one, and he was actually working on another dog on hold. And so he's thinking he wants to work on hold. And so I said, well, show me what's going on. And he taught his dog sit, which is fine, you do you or whatever. And so he kept struggling with the sit. And so you're a young parent, right? And he is too. I said, dude, pick your battles. Just let that sit be sloppy for a little while. That's not the focus here. Let's work on hold. And so he had since come back to me. He said, dude, it's working out a lot better,
Yeah. That's cool. When you've been doing this a long time, you've trained a lot of dogs, you've got a lot of tools at your disposal. When you're starting a dog, do you know that I could do all these different things? And I think every person can decide for themselves, like, at what point do they stop? Like me, I'm the bird hunter. My dogs get to this sort of minimum level, and we're working together as a team in the woods, and I'm pretty content. When you start a dog, do you know that I'm going to go all the way in that, where this dog's going to be steady to wing shot and fall? It's going to go through force fetch, or do you pick and choose what levels you bring individual dogs?
Yeah, and the book talks about steady to wing and shot. I got a video, I can and have done steady to wing and shot. It's not my focus. In my circle, there's no NAVDA around here. In my circle, we're a bunch of bird hunters. And so I personally, I just want staunch for my dogs. If they'll just stay there and let me flush the bird, I'm happy. I do want them to retrieve. I want, point and back and retrieve. And so, yeah. But now something that I'm doing, less of is I'm doing, less work with young dogs. I mean, it goes right back to how we started this, wild birds are the best teacher. And so, I mean, and my dog Izzy, she's in a couple of those videos. I mean, she pointed her first, wild quail. It was 6 months and 2 days. A woodcock came through in February. She was 8 months old. She pointed 10 woodcock in 3 hours, So all I'm doing with my young dogs, and I do have a young pup, January 28 pup, and well, she's actually on there now, on the channel, is just get them pointing and holding some, 20, 30 seconds or whatever, gun conditioned, you gotta have recall. I'm not going out in the field with a dog I can't recall, but that's it. And I mean, we're going to hunt with these dogs for 12 years. I mean, just let them have that first season. And so my whoa video, I say that I don't, formally teach a dog whoa with a structured program that I can overlay, I can enforce, with an e-collar until they've had that first season under the belt. And people ask, well, why is that? It's like, well, if I give you the keys, you're going to want to drive, right? So, I mean, if the dog points and starts creeping, what are you going to do? You're going to yell, whoa. And what if she won't whoa? You're going to yell louder, maybe let's just give her the juice, And so that first season, let's just let them bird hunt, just love birds, love being out there with you, Let's spend our time finding out where birds are and how not to handle them. That's what they're going to do, right? They're going to do a bunch of bumping when they point that first wild bird. That is precious.
Yeah. I like that, especially given where we are at the point of the year. I was going to ask you about this anyways, because I know there's probably a lot of people out there with pups, maybe their first bird dog, maybe second or third. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I want to be a friend of mine who's got a new setter pup. He's like me. He's a bird hunter. He's got 1 or 2 dogs, hasn't trained a bunch of them, but is familiar with a lot of these concepts. But I'm going to be helping him out. And really, I'm looking forward to it, knowing that I will have a pup next spring and I need to kind of remind myself of some of these things and see another dog. Cause my, Rose is 5 years old now. It's hard to believe, but time flies. But thinking about those dogs as you approach that first hunting season, how do you go about, there's always this, what birds do I shoot? What birds do I not shoot? When do I reward the dog? When do I not? How do you think about that first season?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to reward bad behavior. If a dog bumps it, I'm definitely not going to shoot it. And I live in Kentuckiana. I mean, there's just not a lot of wild birds. I mean, I've got access to, if I said 8 coveys of birds, well, I mean, if I go out and hunt 2 days a week and kill 2 birds, I mean, I'm going to have them shot out in a few months, So, in fact, I will occasionally take quail, Caturnix, or bobwhite quail, pull the flight feathers out, and dog does well, covey of birds get up or something. I may throw a one that's got the wing feathers pulled out of it. And so there, I get the work on the crippled bird, and it hadn't cost me a bird. I can go back next week and there's still another 14 birds there, So I would not reward bad behavior. Most of the dogs I tend to gravitate to, they're bird dogs and they got a lot of drive. If I had a dog that didn't have a lot of drive, I would shoot more birds, for them, assuming they gave me something, they maybe a flash point and, they held it for 10 seconds and, they bumped it and I was 20 yards away and could get a shot off. I think I might reward that dog with a bird.
I want to ask you about kind of troubleshooting, again, thinking about younger dogs developing pointing instinct. Is there, say we're doing pigeons and launchers, it's before the season, and you're working on developing that point in that you're popping birds, you're popping pigeons when the dog gets close to the launcher. Can you think of dogs? Are there examples of dogs that were very hesitant to point, whether it was almost like an extreme, maybe these are 2 different cases, an extreme prey drive where they just want to get the bird and they're not pointing, or a dog that is maybe softer, timid, just showing less of a desire, kind of poking around the launcher, but not really pointing? Like, how long does that go on before you feel like you need to try something different?
Yeah. Of course, you're talking about dogs that don't have boogers, that somebody hasn't messed up. I had a dog that was just launcher shy, and we haven't discussed it, but, and the launcher introduction can be really fast, but you want to be careful. Last thing you want to do, is just bring a dog in, and because some of them, and I even have a video where I look at dog trend DT, and I mean, loud, and they throw it too high, and so you want to be careful. And again, most people come over, if we're working dogs the first time, I say, if your dog been around a launcher? No. So I'll just put, it doesn't have to be a bird. I just put a tennis ball or, bumper in there, and you'll be holding your dog on a check cord or even just a little traffic lead or something. I'll be 10 yards out, just get your dog's attention and I'll pop it, and my springs, and I'll put new springs in that are weaker. And so I'll just watch the dog's reaction. Most time, 9 times out of 10, you're good. You just get going, With that dog there that was launcher shy, then I started using those tip-up cages, And so, but I was the launcher because the timing, as we talked about, is so important. So somehow the smell of a launcher, it was different. And so I put a bird in a tip-up cage, and then I'd stand right by it with my bird bag, and I'd have a pigeon in my hand, same deal. As soon as they made acknowledge that they smelled it and they wouldn't stop, and of course, when you throw it, you want to throw it across their eyes so that they go towards the bird,
Yeah. There's so many of those things where, again, I feel like a lot of them are common knowledge and we've talked about many of them before, but I'm trying to remind myself, like we have new listeners to the show all the time. There's always somebody out there that has their first pointing dog and may or may not know that. So whether it's Mark's book or somebody else's, it's a good time to just remind folks, like there are certain things you need to watch out for. Not something to be scared of, because you can kind of get, like, I remember being way too concerned about making fatal mistakes with the bird dog, but there's just, you want to at least have a structure in place or a plan to follow, some of those things to watch out for, like intro to launchers. You want to think through some of those things, intro to gun, intro to launchers, intro to bird. There are some things, there's a lot of great resources on how to do it, but those are things to be mindful of if you do have your first bird dog.
Absolutely. And taking advice from friends, that can be a good thing,
Right.
But, you take a guy who's only had 2 or 3 dogs, let's take gun introduction. A guy gets a dog and he's never had a dog before, and to introduce his dog, he does something dumb. Okay. And let's say he took him to a sporting clay shoot or something, I would never do that. Okay. He does it. He's got a dog that's bulletproof. I mean, this dog is so bold, you couldn't screw this dog up, And so he goes on and he tells people the true story of how, hey, here's how I got old Sparky, conditioned to the gun. And he's sincere, but everybody doesn't have a Sparky, And so, so you just have to be careful with who you get your advice from. It's well-meaning advice. I'm not saying anybody's going to steer you wrong. It's well-meaning advice, but if you don't have that volume of dogs that you've dealt with, you might have just got lucky,
That's what I'm always kind of reminding myself, what haven't I seen with my 2 dogs? But that's where the taking it slow within reason, those gradual steps, a layered approach is usually a safe bet with that kind of stuff. And like you said, a lot of times we'll just breeze right through that. Dogs, good breeding, good genetics, they just breeze right through that stuff, but it's important to go through those steps.
Well, along that, I mean, something that I've learned is that just especially with like your force fetch, I mean, I will take the tiniest bit of progress, and so, I mean, and so you don't need to wear them out. In fact, my sessions are probably shorter now than they've ever been. And if a dog gets something on the first rep, okay, that let's say I was having to hold my hand there, for them to pick up the buck. And I go out tomorrow morning and all of a sudden I just lay it down and I just test the waters and my hand's not there. That dog reaches down, pick that buck up and which they have been unable to do for the last week. I'm like, I'm going to love on that dog and we're going to be done, and then tomorrow I'll guarantee, they're just going to hit the ground running. And so they'll do it, just as well the next day.
Yeah.
So take those little bitty wins. And so it's consistency, it's repetition. Right. And that's where my heart goes out to the people who maybe they don't have birds and they live 60 minutes from a game preserve. It's just not conducive for dog training.
Because
you want to go out there, you're going to drive all that way. You're not going to be satisfied with 2 or 3 birds. And that's what the dog. And so sometimes I'll work dogs with people and I'll say, all right, what are we doing, guys? Are we dog training or are we entertaining ourselves? You want to entertain yourself. Let's go buy 4-year-old dogs that are broke and let's just go entertain ourselves. But if we're dog training, let's give the dog what it needs, which is normally just like a measured dose, to give them 3 or 4 reps or what have you.
I wonder if anybody's tried to invent a pigeon drone yet for backyard training.
I thought about that. I mean, for steadiness, right?
Yeah.
And in my steady to wing and shot thing, I mean, a bird for a dog that's been bird hunted, that's going to be a huge temptation to move from. So normally when I start steadiness, I just start throwing bumpers or balls. But yeah, I mean, what if you had just a whatever, a little plane or helicopter, just something that would fly around and you could just keep working it, so if they'd stand steady for that, that'd be a good intro. Buddy Smith used to use a pigeon pole. Have you ever seen that?
I have. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was in at least one of the original training books I bought for my dog. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And for your, audience who may not know what it is, I mean, basically it's a steel spike in the ground. It maybe projects up maybe like 3 feet. And then you take probably a 10 or 12 foot piece of PVC and you put over it. And then you got like 20 feet harness. And I mean, I had the pleasure of working dogs with Buddy Smith once, and it doesn't fit my program because my program is let's teach dogs that birds can't be caught. And Buddy's like, hey, let's tie it on a string where it can only fly 20 feet.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, and he was able to just work magic with those dogs. But that's something that is available.
That's an interesting example to bring, because like the problem that was trying to solve was, okay, I don't have a whole coop full of pigeons. I don't have a launcher, so I can use one bird over and over again. I don't recall how was the bird like put in a tuft of grass? How were you controlling did you have to have the dog on a check cord then? And how were you flushing the pigeon?
Check cord. Absolutely check cord. Okay. But there are 2 ways, and George Hickox does this. He puts them in the launcher, and so that's his steady to wing shot and fall. He'll tell you, he's a guaranteed bird. You're going to kill that bird, kill that bird every time because he's going down, but with Buddy, he'd just go around and he'd have the Buddy stick, right, which would enable him to get in front. That Buddy stick, like I said, it's PVC, and so it'll kind of resist him wanting to go forward, and then he can kind of get in front, So that's how you could do it. How you could do it if you just had a few birds is that you'd want to work in an area where there aren't a lot of trees, but you can use. Are you familiar with carded birds?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I've seen them. They have used those for some of the woodcock banding clinics and stuff. I've seen that. Yep.
You can use carded birds in a launcher. Got to have a check cord.
Yeah.
So, let's say you've got 3 or 4 birds. This is good. This is a good discussion,
Yeah.
Nick. You could have 3 or 4 birds, keep it in your garage or your basement or your coop, whatever. And then you could take them to the training ground. Again, you can't have trees or power lines because they're going to get hung up in there, And then and you wouldn't want you got to manipulate the size of your card. For carded birds, for those who don't know, it's a piece of cardboard. It could be 6x6, 8x8 or whatever. And it's just tethered to the bird's leg. And so as it flies, it acts like a parachute of sorts. It provides resistance, and then they're going to go down. So you could take 3 or 4 birds, carded. Dog's got to be on check cord the whole time. You work the dog, and then you got to put it back up or whatever. I'm assuming you don't want them to catch. And then what you can do to pick them up at the end of a session is that you just get a broom handle or something with a nail in it. And then that way you just go down and you go through the cardboard, and then you can, because otherwise you're going to look like a clown out there, running around trying to pick it up.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to this, there's a toolkit, there's a lot of different things out there. And we all have this kind of the same limitations problem than trying to create the scenarios to do it. There's different ways to do it. Again, homing pigeons and launchers is again, to my understanding, that's a darn good way to go about it if you've got the ability to do it.
Yeah. And what you'd asked earlier, and I don't think I got around to answering you, if you ever had a dog that just wasn't getting it, and that's that predator point, just where are they? And some of them versatile breeds, there's a lot of, predation in there. And I had one that just recently, he would not point. And so just for lack of nothing to do, I actually did the fun whoa with him and the fun back with him. And here's the surprising thing, Nick, he actually did it. And so, that cue whoop for the silhouette was sufficient for him to actually point, but I could not get him to point by set. And so he was a 9-month-old short hair, which ironically, if someone came to me and said, I want my first dog, I mean, as we talked about, finding the litter is more important, than finding a particular breed or whatever. But, short hairs, they often come out of the box ready to roll. I mean, a lot of point, a lot of natural retrieve usually. And so I just told him, I said, and I don't understand why this works. I've seen it just dozens of times, in my training career. When something doesn't work, sometimes time off just works wonders. I do not know why. Force fetch, you're hitting the wall, you try to clarify it and you can't, and so dog's 9 months. I didn't realize he was that young. He was a big dog, I said, why don't you come back one Saturday in October? We'll see if he's made any progress. And let's plan on you bring him here for at least a week in March. That's when I start taking dogs again, when we have the time change. I said, I'll just try him for a week. And, from what, August to March, that dog's 50% older, so a big change could take place. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. That's maybe a good point to throw on. Young dogs, they're going to develop at different paces. Right. And so it's very easy, I think, as a first time bird dog owner to get, okay, a week's gone by, 2 weeks gone by, but in the grand scheme of things, maybe let a month or two go by and then see what happens. Don't overreact, right? Don't get too high or too low.
Right. And if you are a bird hunter, and I don't know what the bird populations are in your neck of the woods, and again, I'm not a killer. I mean, Walmart's got chicken on sale, $2.99 every week, so I don't need to be killing these birds, but I mean, I do like to find birds, and I do like the dogs to handle them well when they do find them, but, and people say that dog has, so many flushes before he starts to get it through his head. Well, let's work that out with pigeons and launchers in September and October or April or May or whatever, because I mean, if I had, let's say the magic number for this particular dog happens to be 35, I mean, if it took me 35 wild flushes, I mean, the season's going to be almost over with that dog, and I wouldn't have hunted my older dogs,
Yeah. Whereas 3 a day, you can get to that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the point with this dog that I mean, I've given this dog 5, because it just wasn't working, and I mean that's 35.
Was his hesitation to point? Was he super driven in that he wanted to get the bird, or was he just more timid?
Super driven.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to get that bird.
Oh yeah. I mean, he just like an alligator or, a shark jumping up out of the water. He wanted that bird so bad,
Yeah. Okay. We're going to wrap up here in a second. I did want to ask you this. I don't know if I read anything about it in your book. I may have, and it's not coming to mind, but I wanted to ask you, I was watching some of your videos today about, hunting, relocating when it comes to, do you like your dogs to go on point and stand there until you go release them? Do you like your dogs self-relocating, sticking with the bird as long as you trust them to not flush? How do you think about that?
I want bird dogs, I mean, I don't want to have to, I say when I bird hunt, the only thing I want to say to my dogs is dead bird, or fetch them up.
You did write that. Yeah.
I let them relocate, in fact, that I think I don't know if it's called Fun Trial but anyway, there's, and I had a couple of just awesome days with the woodcock this year, and Harper just makes a beautiful relocation. Now, to her credit, I mean, I went in, but she left me. So I'm flushing. It's like, what's going on? And then she left and you actually see it, which is so cool, and so she sticks it. But no, I mean, yeah, I'll absolutely allow them to relocate. I'm talking about woodcock and quail for the most part. I'm not a pheasant hunter, but I hear they give dogs nuts.
Right. Yep. Yeah. My younger dog I learned a lot with my older dog, Hartley, and with Rose, I was more kind of in line with sort of your, I knew enough to know, like, okay, I need to do these certain things, but I don't need to worry about this. And so I was able to just relax a little bit more, and I let her develop, and I let her and the birds develop their relationship. And that has been one of the most enjoyable things. She's a really, really good relocator on rough grouse and woodcock. That's primarily what we hunt. And to me, that's like some of the most fun is after that initial point and then watching her stick with the bird and relocate. I mean, that's the peak right there.
Yeah. Well, you've been in it long enough, and I don't know how your journey was, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, but it's how, when you get into something, after 3 or 4 years, you seem to think you know a lot.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know. And it's you don't even have the questions,
That's right.
And so, I mean, after 3 or 4 years, I'd read multiple books, lots of videos, and I thought I knew a bunch and just didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just kind of the evolution of a dog trainer.
Yeah. And I think a lot of things in life are like that. It's just you can certainly do your due diligence and absorb that information and be a sponge like you talked about, but inevitably you need experience and perspective, and that will change how you think about certain bits of information that you've collected along the way. And that's just part of the learning process, which is just fun.
Oh yeah. Well, you probably heard, success leaves clues, and so, and I really recommend mentors, but you want to pick a good one. You want to pick a good one. You get around somebody who's always bellowing and picking them up and shaking them and setting them down, and so, you just want to pick a good one.
Do you have a favorite bird to hunt, Mark?
I haven't hunted that. I've never even, been up to Wisconsin to grouse hunt, so I cut my teeth on bobwhite quail. And it is, like I said, my friend, we were hunting those reclaimed strip mine ground. I don't know if you know the folk song Paradise by John Prine. He talks about Muhlenberg County and Peabody's coal train done hauled it away. Well, they hauled it away, but then they reclaimed it. And I mean, there were birds everywhere in the 90s. And so it just something about a covey of 15 getting up and then going and hunting singles, And my first bird dog, she was a June pup. And so it would have been her second season. She'd been 16 months old in October. And so we get this covey of birds, scattered. And so this little dog, she starts sticking singles left. I'll never forget that. She starts sticking singles left and right. And I tell people, I said, I went in the field with a pup. I came out with a bird dog, And so I still love it to this day. That video of my dog, Izzy, pointing at that wild quail at 6 months. I mean, I got that on camera. Of course, that's what I'm doing these days. I just as likely to have an iPhone with me to record it than I do a gun,
Yep. Do you have a bucket list bird or a bucket list hunt that you're dying to do?
Yeah, I think I would like to go out west.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I'll be candid, for the people who buy a book or they may ask me a question, which I'm happy to, try and, answer questions, my email address, if they're from like bird country, I'll make a little note, so-and-so from, and he hunts, Sharpies and Huns. And so I thought, and I don't expect anybody to give me their honey holes, but I mean, if I emailed somebody and said, hey, we corresponded a few years ago, I'm thinking about coming out to Montana, is it a good year? Can you give me any direction? So
of course we all wish we had, 10 months of October every year, right? Like to do it all, you got more hunt invites than you know what to do with. And it's the people that I interact with and come across with. It's most people are pretty awesome about that. And you never know, you make a connection like that. And it's fun.
Sure. And I'll have guys, they'll, I'll be working dogs with them and they'll say, well, what do we think about this dog? We think about this dog, and I'm not saying I don't have an opinion, but I'm like, you know what? You're going to know more about this dog in your first, 2-day trip out of town than I could possibly tell you about how things go here on my 3 acres or the 100 acres we run dogs next door, So, you just have to, you don't know what you got until you, and we didn't talk about buying started dogs, but you don't know what you got until you do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. How about shotguns? Do you have a favorite shotgun, collection of them? Is it just a tool?
My dad passed away 41 years today. I was 17 years old, and he had an old Sportsman 48, and that's old recoil. It was precursor to the 1100. And I still shoot it, and it fits me really well. It's an inexpensive gun. Yes.
The only gauge back then, right?
Yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I've got the bug for side by sides, and listeners will know all too well.
Yeah.
I've gone down that rabbit hole, but I always appreciate. My first grouse gun was a Remington 870 Express.
Oh, okay.
youth model.
Okay.
I still have
Yeah.
it. It's my turkey gun. It has been my turkey
Yeah.
gun. the
Well, that
last
was my
few
duck
years,
gun.
so.
Paid $199 for it at Walmart,
Mhm.
and so
Yep.
and so I'm gonna, maybe rebuke some of your listeners. You know how much I love pigeons and launchers. If you're walking through the field and you got a $5,000 gun and you don't have $500 for a launcher, shame on you. So
Right.
yeah. You're having a $50,000 truck, so
Yes.
shame on you,
Yes. Fair enough, Mark. Fair enough.
I know it wasn't directed at you.
So-
That wasn't directed at you.
No. You can direct at me at all you want. I will take it. I appreciate that. You've got the YouTube channel. You've got the book. Again, I'll show it here for anybody watching on YouTube. Favorite ways to train your bird dog. What is the best way for folks to get in touch with you? Perhaps pick up a copy of the book and direct them to the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, the channel is Mark Payton Gun Dogs, and email is payton1221@yahoo.com. I'm happy to answer questions if it looks like it's going to get involved. And I have done telephone conferences, some nominal fee for every 15 minutes or whatever. And for anybody in the, Louisville, Southern Indiana area, I train dogs. But we, as I said, the one-on-one personal sessions that's something that I'm more than willing to do too.
Awesome, Mark. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us on the Birdshot Podcast episode. Thank you for sharing all of the resources and your knowledge and experience on the YouTube channel and the book and everything else. And best of luck to you, and thanks for joining us, buddy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, Nick, thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, everyone. It's your host, Nick here. One more thing before you go. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Birdshot Podcast presented by Onyx Hunt. Be sure to subscribe and follow the show so you don't miss our next episode. And if you really love the show and want to contribute above and beyond what you already do by listening, you can do so by joining our Patreon community. Click the link in the show notes to this episode. You can sign up for as little as $5 a month. And if you do, I will send you some of these Birdshot Podcast can coolers and stickers as a thank you for doing so. Thanks, everyone. Catch you on the next episode of the Birdshot Podcast.